Border Management Authority says more than 1 million people passed through South Africa's ports of entry during the Easter period. Commissioner Dr. Michael Masiapato says OR Tambo International Airport processed the most people, followed by the Libombo and the Beitbridge border post. Let's speak to the Commissioner now, joining us this evening. Commissioner, good to have you, and thank you very much for coming on this evening. The decision to integrate all the multi-agencies into a one-stop shop or a central platform that is controlled singularly and commanded singularly by your office. Is that beginning to pay off?
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Thabo, and we appreciate the opportunity as the Border Management Authority. Yes, indeed, Thabo, we have been able to see that indeed the decision of South Africa from in terms of moving away from the implementation of a multi-agency approach in terms of border management into an integrated border management model with a single command and control, it is indeed paying off. And we're able to see that on the basis that it becomes a bit easier, to direct operations. It becomes a bit easier to allocate responsibilities in terms of the actual deployments on the ground. But more importantly, in terms of the port processes, it also enables us to streamline the activities in the ports and remove a lot of bureaucratic hindrances and make sure that the people who are legitimately supposed to be traveling are indeed processed accordingly without much of challenges. So indeed, we've been able to see that just in the past 12 months that we have been in operation.
Yeah. How do you reconcile that report with, kind of reports that we see from Herman Mashaba of Action SA, Gayton McKenzie of Patriotic Alliance, who say we've been at the border, there's really nothing happening here. Look at this fence, it's been cut, and look at that, the people are just moving in and out. Are you saying people should not believe those reports, they should not take them seriously as compared to what you're experiencing on the ground?
Yeah, Thabo, I think we need to clarify the context. Firstly, you will remember that the key, responsibility we have is facilitating the legitimate movement of persons and goods across our 71 ports of entry. That's the first one. But the second one is to make sure that as we do that work, we also counter those people who try to enter the Republic illegally, either at the port of entry or through the vulnerable segments on the borderline. So in terms of the actual processing, in terms of the efficiencies that has been brought through in terms of the ports, and I think you will be able to see the kind of order that we even had in this particular festive season in terms of how we managed the corridor, how we managed traffic, how we manage people. And by the way, there are some media houses who also interviewed people in the ports. I remember one individual said, I used to spend 4 hours a year in Beitbridge. Now at least I'm spending 30 minutes. If you go to Libombo, for instance, the trucks used to stand there for days and all, and now we've reduced the waiting time from 9 hours to at least 3 hours. So that one, I will say, Thabo, we are doing well. Now, the challenge is about the issue of illegal migration, particularly illegal migration that is happening on the vulnerable segments of the borderline. You will remember that we are doing that work together with other law enforcement authorities, which includes the members of the SANDF in particular. Now, if you were to look at the vulnerable points across the country, by the way, not just in Beitbridge, but across the country, we have done static deployments of the border guards in those vulnerable segments to be able to counter those individuals who try to come into the country illegally. And by the way, we cannot try to even give an impression that we had completely mitigated the issue of illegal migration. Typical example, just on the period of 10 days, running from the 26th of March 2024 to the 4th of April 2024, which is the period through which we ran this operation, we were able to intercept 3,800 people just in 10 days who were trying to enter the country illegally. The majority of those tried that on the vulnerable segments. From our point of starting to work incrementally, we've given the figure is around 281,000 people that we're able to intercept. From where we are sitting, there is progress. We know there is no any physical barrier in as far as our borders are concerned. We know the challenges of the border fence in Beitbridge, what happened and all of that. So we cannot deny a fact that the actual barriers are actually not there. However, it does not mean we should not do the work. We continue to do the work. At the same time, We are not saying it is completely mitigated, but we are saying we are making progress. With the deployment of technology, with some bit of additional boots on the ground that we will be getting, we should be able to have more impact in as far as this issue is concerned.
So you're saying of the 3,800, most of them would be happening at these vulnerable areas. So the border environment itself has been sanitized. Because I looked at that number and I said, how many of those people would have tried, for example, to come through with fake documents? How many of those people would have also tried to come through with the collaboration of your officials?
Yeah, so you see, the figures we've given there, Tabo, 3.8 is the total number, but over 2,000 were intercepted on the vulnerable segments in particular, because these were the people without documents at all. But we also have some very minute number who tried their luck inside the port of entry. But because of the new approach that we have started deploying, Tabo, of intensified access control into the port, we have started to mitigate that particular aspect. That's the first one. Secondly, we have also done a conscious activity, particularly in our big land ports, to make sure that the port of entry is sanitized, meaning we do not want people who are just loitering inside the port. We do not want people who are not travelers in the port, because that initially created a lot of facilitators who will then compromise our own officials, for instance. So in this instance, what it means is, with the deployment of the border guards at the entry gates of the port and only allow people with requisite documents to enter the port, it had started to help us to mitigate people without documents trying their luck in the port of entry. Because at the end, the people who appear before an immigration specialist will be the people with documentation already, and those ones will not have a need to pay anybody anything because they just need to be processed. So that's what we've done. Now, the key issue, Tabo, in this instance is the issue of the vulnerable segments. And the reason why it is difficult, it is because when we then start to deploy in this particular area, the people actually move to another vulnerable area, and then we keep on moving as we intercept and all of that. So it is not an easy task, especially without a physical barrier. That is why, Tabo, we are very much confident that with the SIU having won, as an example, the issue of the 40 million that was used to construct the fence in Beitbridge at the tribunal, and the fact that that money is going to be brought back to the Department of Public Works, there will be the construction of a bit of a barrier. It will actually start to help us to do the work better. But we are not only talking about Beitbridge, there are a lot of other areas, Lebombo, Maseru Bridge, Caledon Sport, Tasha Snake, and all of those ports to Lesotho, to Mozambique and all. But we are doing our best with what we have. And by the way, Tabo, we are saying, once we deploy our drones technology, we will even be able to tell you the people or the numbers of people that we were not able to intercept. Currently, we can't tell you that because we don't have an idea.
I wanted to ask you that, what is your margin for error? How many do escape the system?
Yeah, see, Tabo, that's the golden question. That's why I actually responded before you asked it, because I knew it was going to be your next question. So we don't have technology in terms of drones deployed yet. However, we had procured it, and our colleagues from AMSCO had fairly promised us that they will be able to deliver it sometimes in the middle of the year. That on its own is going to help us to answer this particular question, because we will be able to have footage of all of the activities in these vulnerable segments and be able to do some kind of an estimated figure. Currently, we don't have that figure. How many people did we miss? We don't have that.
Is this an effort purely on your part as South Africa, or is there a sense that you are getting some degree of effort from your counterparts at all these various ports?
You see, in this particular question, Tabo, what we always do is to cite the example of Lesotho. So, in terms of Lesotho, we had the highest cooperation. And that is why you will fairly see that when it comes to illegal migration on the Lesotho side, we can't say it's 100%, but there is better progress. One of the reasons why there is better progress is because when we engage with our colleagues on the Lesotho side, there is fairly good cooperation. And by the way, I can give you the typical example of something very big that happened. The Minister of Home Affairs on our side, Dr. Mtoledi, signed what is called the returns agreement with his counterpart in Lesotho. What that means is, if we intercept a particular nationality in our border with Lesotho, we don't have to take that person or those people and bring them inside South Africa, take them to Lindela via Home Affairs Immigration and get them deported at our cost. We don't do that. They have signed what is called a returns agreement. What that means is when we intercept a particular nationality in our border with Lesotho, we take that person back to Lesotho. Lesotho will then have to deport that person at their own cost. So because of that, they then have a stake in the process, and that is why they are cooperating with us and they are working with us, and there is progress. In terms of Mozambique, there is also some bit of progress in as far as the cooperation, in as far as illegal migration is concerned. The area where we still have some challenges is the issue of the stolen vehicles and all of that. And of course, with Eswatini, there's not much of an issue in as far as this. The biggest issue we have is with our colleagues from Zimbabwe, and that is why we are continuing to say, in this current period, we are going to intensify our engagement with them so that we can start to perfect some of these issues. During this period, by the way, Thabo, we did cooperate with them. We even were able to destroy some of the bridges that they created where they were moving illicit goods in between the jurisdictions through the Limpopo River because the water levels are low. So we have done some bit of operations with them, but we are not satisfied at the level of cooperation we are at. So that is why I have to lead teams on the ground to go engage with our counterparts that side. Once we perfect that, we should be able to talk a different story.
Authority Commissioner still with us, Dr. Michael Masiapato. So the last time we were talking about this confusion, this misunderstanding, you said, no, there's a certain number of people who were caught in a bus, and your counterpart in Zimbabwe says, no, those people were not illegal, they were just unaccompanied. And you have NGOs jumping in and so on and so forth in other instances. What was the situation this Easter?
Yeah, so Thabo, you're referring to the operation that we had on the 2nd, on a Saturday. We started around 12 in the day until 3 in the morning. And of course, it was fully reported wherein around 42 buses were fairly intercepted, and we had around 400 plus children that were unfortunately found unaccompanied and undocumented. And we had to then engage with our colleagues on the Zimbabwean side, and we had to then return them. Because, by the way, Thabo, it is something that is very much serious. We cannot, even if we might want to politic, we cannot deal with the issues of children as if we are kind of playing, as adults. The key issue here is there are people who just, either they phone whoever and then they literally put children inside a bus and all of that. There was no way that we were going to allow that to happen. If it is something that actually happened before, we had to indicate that we are now in the space and we have to make sure law and order is actually restored in the environment. So that happened. By the way, the issue you're referring to where the issue was starting to be political and there were some political statements and all of those, as you will know, we don't play in the political space. We keep at our technocratic level, we do our job. So once it became political, we had to make sure that the Minister of Home Affairs, who is the chairperson of the Interministerial Committee on Border Management, takes over. And he was able to participate in those political discussions. What we can assure you, Thabo, is that the children were taken care of and they were given to the social department on the Zimbabwean side, and they did indicate they did the work to reconcile those children with their families. And we can also, by the way, Thabo, tell the good news that says, since that particular incident, we actually have recorded a very reduced number of children that actually came through to the ports. Again, we are not talking only Beitbridge, but the rest. After we had that reality, we have seen a reduction in the number of unaccompanied minors, undocumented, coming through into the ports. And by the way, for now, even in this festive period, the whole 10 days period, we were able to only intercept 5 children. And I think you will see that in the statement, where we are indicating that they were from the Zimbabwean side, they came through into Beitbridge. And this time around, we had the Department of Social Development from the South African side. And they actually took the children, they activated the social workers in Musina, they did their process, and again, they engaged their colleagues in the Zimbabwean side, and they returned them. The second incident involving a child is what happened in Grobler's Bridge, wherein a woman came through into the port without a passport on the South African side, saying that she's going to the DRC. She was carrying what we call a emergency travel document, ETD, from the embassy of the DRC. The child, just below a year, was undocumented. We can't allow that. So that is why we had to say this. We have to then take the person with the child to social development, back into the country, back into a place of safety, so that work can be done to determine who is this child and all of that. The reason why these issues are serious, we don't want an incident where a particular child gets taken by some person who then come at the port of entry and claim to say this is my child, but there's no any proof to that effect, and therefore exit with the child. We are going to be held accountable for such. So that is why we are serious when it comes to issue of children. So that is why, Thabo, in terms of the work that we are doing, we have started to do things differently at the port. And from where we are sitting, we are able to see a sanitized environment with some bit of progress.
Are you just really threatening, or are you beginning to penalize bus companies that are obviously not taking seriously that environment that you are taking so seriously? And is the fine, as you carrot and stick, is it painful enough?
Yeah. You see, Thabo, what used to be happening? By the way, remember, before we came into the space to do border law enforcement, the Department of Home Affairs with the officials on the ground, they were fairly charging these bus companies. By the way, over time, to the tune of over 250 million. And the worst part of it, even the companies themselves were not even honoring in terms of paying this amounts. So when we came in, we were very much clear, by the way. I met with the majority of these bus companies, the owners, the CEOs, and we said to them, we are now on the ground. This issue is not going to be acceptable. Over and above the charging, in terms of the 15,000 per person brought without documents, we now also arrest the bus driver for aiding and abetting. And the next step that we are working on is actually taking over, or what you call your confiscating of the bus, if they continue to do so and they continue to pay the fine. Again, if you check the statement, we do indicate, Tower, that we have seen a significant decrease in as far as the number of conveyancers who actually come into the port and ultimately get illegal people across. In the statement, we indicate in these 10 days of the operation, we only have around 8 incidences of that, and we charge those conveyancers to the value of 270,000. One thing that is very clear in terms of our work is to make sure that the conveyancers who are charged are actually given timelines to pay. And if they don't pay, the buses will not be allowed to continue doing interjurisdictional work. And by the way, when they insist, we have a very close working relationship with Cross-Border Road Transport Agency, which gives these buses cross-border permits. And to that effect, they are ready to withdraw some of those permits if they continue to cooperate. From where we are sitting, the bus owners argued that they are cooperating and they are willing to cooperate, but they said the problem sometimes has been the drivers. So based on that, we have said, so let's work together, therefore, to deal with the issue. And again, we are able to see the trend shifting.
Commissioner, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much for staying on and for coming on this evening. Dr. Michael Masiapato, Border Management Authority Commissioner there.